hey, come on down to room 110, this is what's really happening. So sure enough, this is the heart and soul of what's going on in the Bitcoin conference, in my opinion, because Bitcoin's all about individual sovereignty.
Yeah.
And, everybody here is a warrior trying to fight for sovereignty of country, but sometimes that gets all kind of messed up politically. To give you a little idea of my background, my dad was a Marine, and he was, my eldest sister was born in Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And to make leave, well, one particular weekend, my pregnant mom, my dad had her march with the Marine Corps for a few hours to force labor. So I'll give you an idea of his thinking. And so he was also a drill instructor. And so he is somebody who I know was passionate about the Marine Corps, and his values were, as he said it, core God country, I believe is what he expressed his priorities. And let's talk about Bitcoin here, because Bitcoin is interesting in that it's a tool that can be used either offensively or as a shield. As a shield, it does give folks individual sovereignty, and it gives people a sense of purpose, and it gives people a sense of family, and it gives people who are thinking in terms of allowing themselves to put themselves on the line, to put their lives on the line, to defend their values, to defend their family. It gives them the ultimate way to achieve the sovereignty and the values and the priorities that they in their heart seek. That they in their heart would join up with the military services, because they have a thought, they have a passion, they have a belief, they're willing to serve. And sometimes that love is not reciprocated. And sometimes that love is not appreciated. Well, you have a chance to express your passion and your integrity and your values with Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin gives you that individual sovereignty, and it gives you something for your family, for the next generation and the generation of that. It turns your work into immutable, uncensorable, unconfiscatable, perfect money that is yours and only yours, that nobody can take from you. The government cannot take it from you. The history of Bitcoin is really, I express it in three ways. That money existed before the state. Then you have Bitcoin separates money from state, and Bitcoin kills the state. And now this is an interesting thing to consider, is that if the state, like the central banks around the world, dissolves, if the United States dissolves, and I think it will, as all nation states do, it's no longer fit for purpose. It's no longer able to protect people in this country, in the United States, are not really being protected by the basic functionality of any government is to protect the citizens. That's the one minimal requirement you would need from a government, and that's not being met by this government. So we really have to think about the future and think about a world where countries and sovereignties and central banks really get obliterated and disintermediated by Bitcoin, and we enter a world of decentralization. Does that mean that you stay in the U.S. and fight, or does it mean you leave the U.S.? Well, that choice is up to everybody. But the thing about Bitcoin is, because it's global money, it's universal money, you have the choice to leave. Now, I live in El Salvador, and El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, and they have a program of economic freedom. And the president of El Salvador, President Bukele, is a guy who doesn't like government too much. He's always trying to downsize government, get rid of government. He throws, decentralized the population to think for themselves, work for themselves, make their money, make their hard-earned money, and they save in Bitcoin. And the economy is growing, and they got rid of their murder problem. This was the most violent country in the world 2.5 years ago. It's now the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, because the president simply said, you know what, we're going to put 70,000 gangsters in jail. Crime rate right down to zero. And now in the second term, he's focusing on economic growth. So El Salvador is actually a place you might want to consider to move. and we're giving away 5,000 passports. It's a place you can think about. Take your family. The family values are very strong. Just spoke to a family a few minutes ago. A lot of families in the U.S. are not happy with the way that the education system is going in the U.S. A lot of homeschooling going on in the U.S. Well, we have strong values in El Salvador. But regardless of that, let's say you stay and fight. You're like, you know what? This is my home. I'm gonna fight. Well, of course, that's an option. And Bitcoin is still important as a way to have unconfiscatable wealth that they can't get, and gives you individual sovereignty. And it's I think, ultimately what will be a part of what I call the global hash war. So just a few years ago, there was talk about countries banning Bitcoin. But now these countries figured out that it's impossible to ban Bitcoin. You can't ban Bitcoin. So now they've flipped. They're like, you know what? We actually have to accumulate Bitcoin. We have to hoard Bitcoin, and because that's the only, it's the gunpowder of the 21st century. You know, once gunpowder was invented and once it was started to get known and used, any country that didn't use gunpowder was going to get taken over by a country that with gunpowder. So with Bitcoin, any country that stays in the fiat money world is going to get destroyed by countries in the Bitcoin world. That's the new world. It's the Bitcoin world. And so the global hash war, the global hash rate, and everybody in this room should be stacking sats. This is my main message. Everybody in this room should be stacking sats. Obviously, everybody is stacking sats in this room to some degree, and I would say stack harder. You know, stack like your life depends on it, because it does. It really does. If in fact, you know, occasionally you gotta sound the retreat. And if that's what happens and it's time to retreat, you can put your Bitcoin on a seed phrase and walk naked through the airport, get on a plane, fly anywhere in the world, and have all your wealth with you. They can't confiscate it. They can't do that with gold. Can't do that with paper money. So it's really remarkable in that way. It gives people an option that they've never had in history. You know, people call President Bukele a dictator, but what dictator in the world would ever give his people individual sovereignty by making Bitcoin legal tender? No, that wouldn't happen. It's the complete opposite of a dictator. He wants the people in the country to stand up, be entrepreneurs, make money, and store it in Bitcoin and achieve individual sovereignty. So that's a great example. I know later Donald Trump will be speaking, and you see what's happening here, that the political class recognizes there's a huge vote to be had in the Bitcoin space. So they're coming out and they're talking to Bitcoiners. They're here in the conference. I think RFK already said he wanted the government to put maybe 3 or 4 million Bitcoin on the country's balance sheet, which is what we already do in El Salvador. I think he may have stolen the thunder from Donald Trump. I think that was going to be his big reveal, so he'll have to come up with something else. But the fact now that we see that whole political pendulum swinging toward Bitcoin should also encourage you to stack harder, right? Whatever it is your position is, you know, keep stacking and figure out ways to make that happen, because the trip from 65,000 to 650,000, which is what we're going to see here in the next cycle, you're going to be happy for every Satoshi that you've been able to accumulate. So I want to thank Rick for allowing me to crash your party here today and speak. It was very generous. If I do a question or two, if you're interested, anybody have a question? I'll answer a question. If anyone has a question, happy to answer anything about anything.